welcome back to Reads with Rune B. We will be continuing with Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. We are on Chapter 7, the Mad Hatter's Tea Party, or a Mad Tea Party. There was a table set out under a tree in front of a house, and the March Hare and the Hatter were having tea at it, and a dormouse was sitting in between them, fast asleep, and the other two were using it as a cushion, resting their elbows on it and talking over its head. Very uncomfortable for the dormouse, thought Alice. Only, as it's asleep, I suppose it doesn't mind. The table was a large one, but the three were all crowded together at one corner of it. No room, no room, they cried when they saw Alice coming. There's plenty of room, said Alice indignantly, and she sat down in a large armchair at one end of the table. Here is our picture of Alice, the Mad Hatter, the March Hare, and the Dormouse sitting at the tea table. There's plenty of room, said Alice indignantly as she sat down in a large armchair at one end of the table. Have some wine, the March Hare said in an encouraging tone. Alice looked all around the table, but there was nothing on it but tea. I don't see any wine, she remarked. There isn't any, said the March Hare. Then it wasn't very civil of you to offer. And it wasn't very civil of you to sit down without being invited, said the March Hare. Well, I didn't know it was your table, said Alice. It's laid for a great many more than 3. Your hair wants cutting, said the Hatter. He had been looking at Alice for some time with greatest curiosity, and this was his first speech. You should learn not to make personal remarks, Alice said with some severity. It's very rude. The Hatter opened his eyes wide on hearing this, but all he said is, Why is a raven like a writing desk? Come on, we shall have some fun now, thought Alice. I'm glad they've begun asking riddles. I believe I can guess that, she added aloud. Do you mean you think you can find out the answer to it? Said the March Hare. Exactly so, said Alice. Then you should say what you mean, said the March Hare. I do, replied Alice hastily. At least, I mean what I say, and that's the same thing, you know. Not the same thing a bit, said the Hatter. Why, you might just as well say, I see what I eat is the same thing as I eat what I see. You might just as well say, added the March Hare, that I like what I get is the same thing as I get what I like. You might as well say, added the Dormouse, who seemed to be talking in his sleep, that I breathe when I sleep is the same thing as I sleep when I breathe. It is the same thing with you, said the Hatter, and here the conversation dropped, and the party sat silent a minute, while Alice thought over all the things she could remember about ravens and writing desks, which wasn't very much. The Hatter was the first to break the silence. What day of the month is it? He said, turning to Alice. He had taken out of his pocket. He had taken his watch out of his pocket, and was looking at it uneasily, and shaking it every now and again, and then holding it to his ear. Alice considered a little, and said the 4th. 2 days wrong, sighed the Hatter. I told you. Butter wouldn't suit the works, he added, looking angrily at the March Hare. But it was the best butter, the March Hare replied meekly. But some crumbs must have gotten into it as well. The Hatter grumbled. You shouldn't have put it in with the bread knife. The March Hare took the watch and looked at it gloomily, and then he dipped it in his cup of tea and looked at it again, but could think of nothing better than his first remark. It was the best butter, you know. Alice had been looking over his shoulder with some curiosity. What a funny watch, she remarked. It tells the day of the month, but it doesn't tell what o'clock it is. Why should it? Muttered the Hatter. Does your watch tell you what year it is? Of course not. But that's because it stays the same year for ever such a long time together. Which is just the case with mine, said the Hatter. Alice felt dreadfully puzzled. The Hatter's remark seemed to her to have no sort of meaning in it, and yet it was most certainly English. I don't quite understand you, she said politely as she could. Dormouse is asleep again, said the Hatter, as he poured a little hot tea onto its nose. The Dormouse shook its head impatiently, and said, without opening its eyes, Of course. I was just going to remark myself. Have you guessed the riddle yet? The Hatter said, turning to Alice again. No, I give up, Alice replied. What is the answer? I haven't the slightest idea, said the Hatter. Nor I, said the March Hare. Alice sighed wearily. I think you might do something better with the time, she said, than wasting it in asking riddles that have no answers. If you knew time as well as I do, said the Hatter, you wouldn't talk about wasting it. It's him. I don't know what you mean, said Alice. Of course you don't, said the Hatter, tossing his head contemptuously. I dare say you never even spoke to time. Perhaps not, Alice cautiously replied, but I know when I have to beat time when I learn music. Ah, that accounts for it. No, he won't stand beating. Now, if you only kept on good terms with him, he'd do almost anything you like with a clock. For instance, it was supposed to be 9 o'clock in the morning, just in time to begin lessons. You'd only have to whisper a hint to time, and round goes the clock, and in a twinkling it's 1:30 and time for dinner. I only wish it was, said the March Hare to himself in a whisper. That would certainly be grand, said Alice thoughtfully, but then I shouldn't be hungry for it, you know. Not at first, perhaps, but you could keep it to 1:30 for as long as you like. Is that the way you manage? Asked Alice. The Hatter shook his head mournfully. Not I. We quarrelled last March, just before he went mad, you know, pointing with his teaspoon to the March Hare. It was a great concert given by the Queen of Hearts, and I had to sing Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Bat. How I wonder where you're at. You know the song, perhaps? I've heard something like it. Well, it goes on, you know, the Hatter continued in this way. Up above the world you fly, like a tea-tray in the sky. Twinkle, twinkle. Here the Dormouse shook himself and began to sing in his sleep. Twinkle, 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 twinkle. And went on so long that they had to pinch it to make it stop. Well, I'd hardly finished the first verse, said the Hatter, when the Queen bawled out, He's murdering the time! Off with his head! How dreadfully savage, Alice exclaimed. And ever since that, the Hatter went on in a mournful tone, he won't do a thing I ask, and now it's always 6 o'clock. A bright idea came into Alice's head. Is that the reason so many tea things are put out here? She asked. Yes, that's it, said the Hatter with a sigh. It's always tea time, and we've no time to wash things between whiles. Why, then, you just keep moving around, I suppose, said Alice. Exactly so, and as things get used up. But when you come to the beginning again, suppose we change the subject, said the March Hare, interrupted and yawned. I'm getting tired of this. I vote the young lady tells us a story. I'm afraid I don't know one, said Alice, rather alarmed at the proposal. Then the Dormouse shall, they both cried. Wake up, Dormouse! And they pinched it on both sides at once. The Dormouse slowly opened his eyes. I wasn't asleep, he said in a hoarse, feeble voice. I heard every word you fellows were saying. Tell us a story, please. Yes, please do, pleaded Alice, and be quick about it, or you'll be asleep again before it's done. Once upon a time there were 3 sisters, the Dormouse began in a great hurry. Their names were Elsie, Lacy, and Tilly, and they lived at the bottom of a well. What did they live on? Said Alice, who always took a great interest in questions of eating and drinking. They lived on treacle. Said the Dormouse after thinking a minute or two. They couldn't have done that, you know, Alice gently remarked. They'd have been ill. So they were, very ill. Alice tried a little to fancy herself what such an extraordinary way of living would be like, but it puzzled her too much. So she went on, but why did they live at the bottom of a well? To take some more tea, said the March Hare to Alice very earnestly. But I've not had anything yet, so I can't take more. You mean you can't take less, said the Hatter. It's very easy to take more than nothing. Nobody asked your opinion, said Alice. Who's making personal remarks now? Asked the Hatter triumphantly. Alice did not quite know what to say to this, and so she helped herself to some tea and bread and butter, and then turned to the Dormouse and repeated herself. Why did they live at the bottom of the well? The Dormouse took a minute or two to think about this, and then said, It was a treacle well. There's no such thing. Alice was beginning very angrily, but the Hatter and March Hare went, Shh, shh, and the Dormouse sulkily remarked, If you can't be civil, you better finish the story yourself. Oh, no, please go on, said Alice, very humbly. I won't interrupt you again. I dare say there may be one. One indeed, said the Dormouse indignantly. However, he consented to go on, and so these three little sisters, they were learning to draw, you know. What did they draw? Said Alice, quite forgetting her promise. Treacle, said the Dormouse, without considering at all this time. I want a clean cup, interrupted the Hatter. Let's all move down one place. And as he spoke, the Dormouse followed him, and the March Hare moved into the Dormouse's place, and Alice, rather unwillingly, took the place of the March Hare. The Hatter was the only one who got any advantage from the change, and Alice was a good deal worse off than before, as the March Hare had just upset the milk jug in his plate. Oh dear me! I apologize, listeners. I have a cold coming on, and so I'm a bit stuffed up. Alice did not wish to offend the Dormouse again, so she began very cautiously. But I don't understand. Where did they draw the treacle from? You can draw water out of a water wheel, said the Hatter. So I should think you could draw treacle out of a treacle well, hey? Stupid! But they were in the well, Alice said to the Dormouse, not choosing to notice his last remark. Said Alice to the Dormouse, choosing not to notice this last remark. Of course they were, said the Dormouse. Well in. This answer so confused poor Alice that she let the Dormouse go on for some time without interrupting. They were learning to draw, the Dormouse went on, yawning and rubbing its eyes, for it was getting very sleepy. And they drew all manner of things, everything that begins with M. Why with an M? Said Alice. Why not? Said the March Hare. Alice was silent. The Dormouse had closed its eyes by this time and was going off in a doze. But on being pinched by the Hatter, it woke up again with a little shriek and went on. That begins with M, and as such, mousetraps, moon, memory, and muchness. You know, you can say things are much of a muchness. Did you ever see such thing as a drawing of muchness? Really, now, if you ask me, said Alice, very much confused, I don't think. Then you shouldn't talk. This piece of rudeness was more than Alice could bear. She got up in great disgust and walked off. The Dormouse fell instantly to sleep, and neither of the others took the least notice of her going. She looked back once or twice, half hoping that they would call after her. The last time she saw them, they were trying to put the Dormouse into the teapot. At any rate, I'll never go there again, said Alice, as she picked her way through the woods. It's the stupidest tea party I was ever at in all my life. Just as she said this, she noticed that one of the trees had a door right into it. That is curious, she thought, but everything is curious today. I think I might as well go in at once. And in she went. And once more she found herself in the long hall, and and close to the little glass table. Now I'll manage better this time, she said to herself, and began by taking the little golden key and unlocking the door that had led into the garden. Then she set to work nibbling at the mushroom. She had kept a piece of it in her pocket, you see, till she was about a foot high. Then she walked down the little passage, and then she found herself at last in the beautiful garden among the beautiful bright flower beds and the cool fountains. And that is the end of our chapter for today. Keep reading.